Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Self-Evident Truth with the Grumpy Old Vet, episode 10. We're going to talk about a few things tonight. Did you ever have a little brother or a little sister, or maybe a cousin that everything you did they tried to intimidate? They tried to They imitated everything you did. The words you said, the expressions you did. If you drew a picture, then they wanted to draw the same picture. Or if you decided to ride your bike, they wanted to ride their bike. You know, I'm sure I'm not the only one that's ever experienced that or seen that happen in a family setting. So they say that the imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. I'm flattered. I'm extremely flattered then. Um, our Declaration of Independence says we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. Now, the pursuit of happiness has always been um, in a court of law or in law meant to be the ownership of property. Now remember, your personality, your character, your wants, your wishes, those are all part of your personal property. That's all part of what makes you you, and it's your property. Now, the government has an obligation and to try to protect one's property. That's why we have land deeds, right? So that it entitles. A title shows ownership. A deed shows ownership, and we have those systems in place to show ownership, so that someone who owns something can make legitimate claim to it, and it's theirs. It doesn't belong to anyone else. It's theirs. In fact, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8 of the Constitution says to promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. Now, court case after court case, and it's established law that is to protect people's intellectual property. So let's say I come up with a new theorem for something, and that becomes my intellectual property. Or let's say I write a book, and the views that are in that book are from my study and from and my thoughts. That's my intellectual property. Or let's say I draft a print. Okay, let's say someone hires me to draft an architectural print for their residence. That print, until I sell it to my customer, is my intellectual property and my intellectual property alone. Now, the same thing happens when I do inspections. Until my customer pays me for that inspection is my intellectual property. Why? Well, because it has my logo on it. It has my artwork on it. It has my experience in it. It has my conclusions in it. So thereby, it is mine. No different than if someone paints a picture, that picture is their intellectual property until they sell that picture. So, interesting thing with this anti-Trump party. Republican Party in Hillsdale, led by none other than Brent Leiniger. In August, when all this happened, they wrote a complaint as the Hillsdale County Republican Executive Committee to the credentialing board of MIGOP. And in that, their whiny little letter, they used a letterhead. And that letterhead looked like this. That's what the letterhead looked like. Problem is, that's not their letterhead. They don't own that property. See, I'm one of the owners of that property because that's my artwork. And I can prove that that's my artwork, and everybody knows that that's my artwork, and I can show all the different sketches and designs until we got to that point. And it's all completely time-stamped, and I've got it. It's mine. Until I sell that to someone, that is my property. And the government has an obligation to make sure that my property stays my property, right? Now, I made a complaint in my, what Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe, Leiniger's lawyers, called my manifesto, which was my answer to their whiny complaints to the credentialing department under Ron Weiser. And in there, I stated that they were using a symbol and a logo that wasn't theirs, didn't belong to them. So, just as imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, they flattered me. What they did was they came up with this symbol. Now, see how here all they did was took my elephant off and put the set excuse for one here. And it's not even one that they designed, it's clip art. Now, they added a few things to try to make it look different, but however, if you look at this and look at this, the colors are exactly the same, and the font is exactly the same, and here's something else interesting. It says Hillsdale Republican Party. But they claim to be the Hillsdale County Republican Party. In fact, they sued us under the Hillsdale County Republican Executive Committee, the HCREC. So the HC, what's that second C stand for? County, Hillsdale County Republican Executive Committee. That's what they sued us under. I'll show you something else that's my design. So Penny Swan flatters me too. So she's usurped my intellectual property and put it on her Facebook page. Now, I'm not a whiny, cryy baby. So I don't care. I'm flattered that she's using my artwork and that my artwork, my intellectual property, is being spread among the county. But obviously it's not hers. And obviously the Hillsdale County Republican Party has to steal intellectual property because they're incapable of creating anything on their own. See, everything that the party is right now was created by a few of us that worked very, very hard. They never worked. They never gave back to the community. They never did anything. They were always known as the country club crew. Everybody knew it. That was the joke around Hillsdale. They never come up with any letterhead. The elephant in the symbol they had before us was sad. And they're welcome to have all that back, what they had before, which was nothing. And I don't know, I might even let them usurp some of our logo. Maybe, maybe not. Because the reason why they want this is because we did the hard work. We came up with a brand standard. We designed it. There's a couple of us that own the intellectual property on that. I own the intellectual property on this solely. Solely, I own the intellectual property on that. That is mine. I did that. So, Brent Leiniger, with his expensive Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe, sued us, and the judge ordered, mind you, by default, which I don't know how he found us in default because we had answered all of their childish complaints. See, you can either file an answer to the complaint or you can file a motion in lieu of in the Michigan court rules. And we always filed a motion in lieu of because we were going to answer their childish sixth grade, oh, Mommy, he hurt my feelings complaints, because that's all they were. They were childish. And why? Because they'd never created anything. They don't create, they only steal. That's why Brent Leiniger's county commissioner. Stealing by taxes. See how they stole that? Because they can't create, they only steal. Now here's the problem. They're wanting the judge to order us to give them our intellectual property. 1/3 of the branch of government, the judicial branch of government, our elected officials want the judicial branch of government to order me to give them my intellectual property. The other thing is they're using our name. See, we have a 501c4. You're welcome to look that up. We have a 501c4. That 501c4 is filed under Hillsdale Republican Party. It is its own entity. It's its own entity. And by corporate law, that's the name and the logo that we registered with them, and that's ours. That's not theirs. And they didn't sue for that. They've sued for the 501b2, I believe it is, that they have, which is a political party. Hillsdale County Republican Party. In fact, even in the judge's orders, he said we couldn't operate as the HCREC or the HCRP, Hillsdale County Republican Party. Well, we're not. We're operating under our 501c4, which is Hillsdale Republican Party. Now, see, under 169.211.6 of the Michigan compiled laws, basically it's the definitions to the election section, which is 168. It says that there can only be the state central has to pick the official party, which means there can be 10 different Republican parties in Hillsdale, if we so wish. There can be 10, but there can only be one official party. And State Central gets to pick that. Well, at the last state convention, State Central did pick that. They picked the Hillsdale Republican Party, not the Hillsdale County Republican Party. So Brent Leininger and the rest of his merry men can call themselves the Hillsdale County Republican Party. No skin off my nose. I don't care. Judge ordered it wrongly, I will admit. And I think that'll come out in future court hearings, whether it's in appellate court in front of the state Michigan Supreme Court or whether it's in a federal district or circuit court. It'll all come out. But the fact is, the government has an obligation to protect my property. And that's my property. We did the hard work. We created the logo. We created it, and we created it as Hillsdale Republican Party, not as Hillsdale County Republican Party. Why do you think we did that? Because they were the Hillsdale County Republican Party. They did nothing. They were useless. They were a huge joke. They did nothing but meet at Olivia's and drink their alcohol and have their steak, and then glad hand everybody on the back and let the politicians come in and say whatever they wanted to, and then praise them, and then they'd all go home. The monthly meeting was over. They didn't do anything for the community. They didn't push any of the Republican values. They didn't hold their elected officials to those values. If they're going to call themselves a Republican, then we hold them a Republican. Don't we do the same thing? If somebody wants to call themselves a member of the Hub, the Hillsdale United Brethren Church, then we expect them to behave a certain way. And when they don't, then two brothers can come to them and say, look, what you're doing doesn't reflect our values. And that reflects on the entire membership of that church, right? Anybody ever hear that happening in a church? I've seen it plenty of times. I grew up in the church. My dad was a deacon almost his whole life. So yeah, I've seen it. I witnessed it. So let's review the points. They created nothing. They have nothing. We took the party over. We created a 501c4 known as Hillsdale Republican Party. That's what we've been operating under, America First. They are trying to steal our intellectual property. Why? Because we put the hard work into it for people to recognize, and that's what they're worried about, that people will recognize that and not their sad attempts at plagiarizing and copying, because it's all they do. They don't create, they only steal. And they're going to try to ask the judge to make us give up the banners that we paid for that are the Hillsdale Republican Party, not Hillsdale County Republican Party property. The t-shirts that we produced that are the Hillsdale Republican Party t-shirts, not the Hillsdale County Republican Party t-shirts. So stay tuned. This is going to get real interesting. But then again, I say the sincerest form of flattery is imitation. And boy, did they imitate us, huh? Well, at least they tried. They stole our symbols. They haven't been able to imitate us. They have their sad little meetings with their certain um, egotists and narcissists that show up, 16 to 20. Been something different maybe if Brent had ever created anything, like maybe a business. He never has. So I guess that's why he sells Farm Bureau insurance, because they already had their logos created. He didn't have to do anything. He could just steal theirs too. But just something to think about. The government's job is to protect the ownership of what I create, of my intellectual property. Then don't you think it's funny that all the elected officials you have in town are trying to go to the third branch of government and get them to force us to give up what is ours, what we created, what is my intellectual property, when it doesn't even say, the judge's order said we couldn't operate as the Hillsdale County Republican Executive Committee, and we're not. It said that we couldn't operate as the Hillsdale County Republican Party, and we're not. We're operating as the Hillsdale Republican Party. Actually, we put a designation to us because they said, well, people aren't going to be able to tell the difference. No, what it is people are going to see just how sad you are because they don't want to be compared to us. That's what it's really all about. There can be two parties. There can be two Republican parties. Let's compete. Let's do it. See, I'm not afraid of competition. They are. So what they have to do is they have to make us stop because they can't compete. That seems about right, right? And that's just kind of their modus operandi. That's what they do. When they can't compete, they cheat. That's what they do. So think about that. Would you like to have your property stolen? Would you like to have your work of art stolen? Would you like to have your hard work stolen? Especially by the sick, lame, and lazy that do nothing to create. They live off tax money and they steal. That's all they do. They don't create. So I thought this would be an interesting talk. I thought this needed to come out. Just something I've been thinking about. I don't like to have my intellectual property stolen from me. I've had it stolen from me quite a bit. In my lifetime, I've lost plenty with having my intellectual property stolen. And I just don't feel like having it taken from me anymore. So I don't think I'm going to allow anyone to steal my intellectual property. So I've been nice up to this point, but I don't like to be taken from, and I don't think most people do. So with that, have yourself a great day. Remember to take some time to smell the roses, take time with your family, take time to smile, laugh, relax, work hard, play hard. It's always been my theory. Spend time with your family, the ones you love. Nobody ever gets to the end of their life and goes, man, I regret I spent so much time with my loved ones. It never happens. So spend some time with your loved ones. They need you and you need them. With that, this is your grumpy old vet signing off.